And then there was the Ratner moment of Kenneth Clarke. So clumsy, so maladroit, so ugly were the words that he chose, that this man, who's been in Parliament, I think, longer than any member of the government, I'm certain, longer than any member of the government, who's been a cabinet minister and a barrister, who is an experienced man of mature years, managed to choose a set of words to talk about the issue of rape and its punishment, detection and punishment, in such a way that very few people believe he can be longer for this political world. I'm not saying he's going to ascend tomorrow with Family Radio, or that he's going to be sacked tomorrow, but surely his time in government is limited. We'll be talking to Kate Smurthwaite, who is a stand-up comedian and feminist writer. And you'll recall she and I had a celebrated exchange just a few weeks ago here on Talk Sport.
What a mouth, what an open south. Blimey, what a mouth he's got.
These are scare stories. Nobody's saying a rape, but a serious, proper rape case is going to be let out of prison in 12 months and all the rest of it. People get different sentences, which is what I was trying to explain, because that is the judge's decision. All rapes should get serious sentences. All rapes are a serious crime.
What a mouth, what an open south. Blimey, what a mouth he's got.
Different rapes get different lengths of sentences. If I cause genuine offence to anybody by explaining that long-standing factual situation, then I must have made a very poor choice of words. I will obviously consider my use of words, and I would choose my words more carefully in future.
Will you consider your position? Will you resign?
To resign for proposals I've never made or thought of making would be just a little odd, I think.
What a mouth, what an open south. Blimey, what a mouth he's got.
Oh, brilliant package by Laurie, our producer, as always. Ken Clarke, of course. A Ratner moment. That was just a taste of it, of course. He made a series of blunders in that interview and then compounded them, not just with the rather forced chuckling that you heard there, but also by subsequent loose-mouthed comments that left him looking, well, foolish. And if he had been some ingenue who had just found himself on the government front bench unexpectedly and in a portfolio that he didn't understand very well, one might have understood it more. But Kenneth Clarke is one of the longest-serving parliamentarians in the House. He's definitely the longest-serving minister in the House. He is a cabinet minister of long-standing across several decades, and he's a barrister. So it's really not easy to understand, other than that he has completely lost the plot for the extraordinary imbroglio which the interview on the BBC sparked. And, of course, it's not only feminists who are up in arms about it, but we wanted to get a feminist take on the whole affair, and who better to do that than the hilarious Kate Smurthwaite, stand-up comic and feminist writer. Kate, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, George.
It's
How
terrific.
Are you?
Yeah, it's terrific to hear you. I haven't yet caught one of your shows, but I have now spoken to several people who have, and I entirely withdraw my earlier contention that women were not funny, because you
good.
are
Well, I hope to see you in person
funny.
soon, George.
I hope so.
You're on my permanent guest list now. I look forward to seeing
Thanks,
you.
Kate. Now tell me, I mean, how do you account for Kenneth Clarke's extraordinary choice of words, first of all?
Well, it's absolutely terrible. First of all, this thing where he's saying that there's some sort of definition of like proper or serious rape, and this sort of inference that somehow, the sort of being dragged into an alleyway by a stranger, well, that's proper rape. But if rape happens, within the family or on a date or with somebody who's already known to the victim, that somehow is a lesser crime. Because, I mean, for starters, in actual fact, very often for the victim, almost the reverse is true. If you're dragged into an alleyway and attacked by a stranger, of course, it's incredibly traumatic, but you're able to go back home to your family who love and care about you, to an environment where you feel safe. If you're raped in your own home, well, where do you feel safe? There's nowhere left. It takes away that one place of refuge that we all like to think we have. So I know from speaking to women who've experienced this that quite often it's rape by by someone who they believe they trust and someone who they think they know and who they think loves them that is the most traumatic experience. So, first of all, it's just a really horrible thing for Kenneth Clarke to suggest that that's not the case. But we also know that one of the huge problems we have with rape in this country is that women who have been victims of rape are often reluctant to come forward. They blame themselves. They tell themselves, well, I shouldn't have been drunk. Well, I shouldn't have been wearing this. Well, I shouldn't have been in this bar. Well, it's my fault. I trusted him. I must have wanted it at some level. And of course, that then makes it more difficult for women to come forward. And especially when women don't come forward directly after the rape, it's much more difficult to get the evidence together. It's much more difficult to create a case. So it's actually putting a further barrier up to our legal process. What we need to be saying is we take it all very seriously. Whoever's done this to you, let us know, and we will bring the full force of the law against them to get justice for you. Yeah, it's frightening, and it really shows how out of touch, not only politicians but even barristers are with the state of human rights in this country.
Indeed, and Flashman, David Cameron, his boss, appears to be, effectively endorsing it by keeping him in his post.
Well, exactly. We live in a country where only 1 in 5 members of Parliament are women. So I guess that the news that that there is a lack of understanding of crimes that affect women is not perhaps as surprising as it should be. But we do live in this frightening world where I know lots of women don't come forward, and in some ways they have a point in not doing so, because the truth of the matter is that our prosecution rate is so poor. Women go to the police, they've often been not believed, they've been told, well, we'll put it down as sexual assault, well, it's your word against his, all this kind of stuff, and the police are immediately asking questions, had you been drinking, this, that and the other, when they should be asking the questions, who was it, what happened, give us the details, and then we'll go and track them down and sort it out.
Yes, I mean, the point that he was seeking to make, he says, was that the sentencing of rape is the same offence, whoever commits it, and in whatever circumstances they commit it. But the differences in each case are reflected in the sentence that the judge gives. And that's entirely proper, surely. We're not saying there should be one tariff for all rapes. The judge must have some discretion. But Clarke's
and that's true in every crime. In every crime, it is up to the judge to make a decision about whether this is a repeat offender, or whether this is somebody who was acting out of character, or lots of things come into it. But what Kenneth Clarke was suggesting, and I believe is still suggesting, is that for rape and a number of other offences, if the accused makes a quick confession and thus sort of speeds up the trial process, they could automatically give a lower sentence. And that's quite a frightening...
50% off.
Exactly, and that's quite a frightening thing, if you can imagine. We know, of course, that some people accused of all sorts of crimes are falsely accused, and I wouldn't pull rape out as a specific example. In fact, a lot of the time, it's things like theft and insurance fraud where there's a real issue around evidence. But if you're accused of something like this, and you really feel certain that you've been framed or that you're going to get done for it, there's a temptation to go, well, I'm going to get sent to prison anyway, so I'll just confess to cut my sentence. And then we're in this situation where if you have confessed quickly, when you come out of jail, you're going to say, well, I didn't do it, I was just saying that to cut my sentencing and all this kind of stuff. I think if you've been accused of something, you're entitled to a fair trial. You're entitled to go along and say, well, here's my point, here's why I think I shouldn't be sent to prison, and you're entitled to have that, to sort of encourage people to just own up quick. I think that's not reasonable. I think actually we want a fair trial, and I actually think, he's saying, oh, we're protecting victims by not making them relive their experience in court, but the rape victims I've spoken to, they want to go to court, and they want to give evidence, and they want to, to be a part of the process which makes sure that the accused gets the maximum sentence and goes to prison, and actually it can be very cathartic to be in court saying, this is what I experienced and all this kind of stuff. And if they don't want to go to court, then of course we've got lots of options. We've got video evidence, we've got all these kind of written evidence, all this kind of stuff that can be done without having to bring victims into the presence of the defendant. We've got lots of processes that help with that. It seems to me what they're trying to do is save a few pence.
Well, that's exactly what it was about. It was to save money. Kate, thanks very much indeed for that. Kate Smurthwaite, stand-up comic par excellence, and a feminist writer, and as you heard, a powerful talker as well. This is George Galloway. This is The Week.